Well, Jonesy, we have one of our special guests back who was actually on the podcast 102 episodes ago and 2 years ago. It's pretty wild. And how much 2 years can change. Craig Sneesby of Sneesby Racing fame, thank you so much for coming.
Pleasure. Hey, good to be back. Wow. It's been a while.
2 years.
Congrats, you boys are still going.
Yeah. Man, we're professionals.
2 years ago, your banner horse was Selino, and he's been bloody good. He hasn't dropped off at all, winning a Brisbane Cup this year, of course. And Sheraz was, I've actually listened back to the episode, Sheraz was one that you were speaking of as well, ran second in a Sydney Cup. But 2 years later, you have Zougotcha winning a Group 1. You have bought into Huya Mal, and then, of course, you got one of the favourite runners in the Melbourne Cup, Soulcombe. How's it feel?
Oh, it's pretty good. I just need them to win. Yeah, no, it's been a crazy 2 years, really. And Selino's still the favourite child, really. Like, he's out in the paddock at the moment, actually. He got some stomach ulcer issues post the Brisbane Cup, and he's just one of those horses that you just want to protect because he's such a good horse, and can kind of do no wrong. He's paid himself well and truly, and you win a Sydney Cup early in the first campaign, and you kind of go, well, he's done, tick. But so he's in the paddock. He'll be back for the autumn, and he's probably in his final year next year, I'd say, before retirement. Go for another Sydney Cup. It'd be a nice way to send him out.
So Sydney Cup ticked off, and you obviously have Soulcombe after what was, in all things considered, a pretty fantastic run in the Caulfield Cup after those starting circumstances. Have you gotten over that run yet?
Oh my God. It was such a funny race to be at because we had Soulcombe and Huya Mal in the Caulfield, and just total extremes in terms of the running pattern and what happened. So Soulcombe obviously missed the jump, and the new age Chautauqua. So he just stood there and waited for everyone to get out of his way and just moseyed on out 6 lengths behind everyone. But he finished off beautifully. His engine is huge. He'll build much better over 2,600 plus. So the 2 miles is going to be special. We just need him to just get a little bit of luck in transit and obviously just be up on pace a little bit better. And Huya Mal, who used to jump like that, so interestingly, full credit to Waterhouse Camp. Now all of a sudden Huya Mal's pinging out of the gates and going to the front, but ultimately didn't have the stamina. So we're now looking that he's probably now showing he's more of a, we'll say 1,800 to 2,000 metre range. So yeah, it was sort of, one was out front, and for a moment you focus there thinking, all right, we're on, and then he fades and the one out the back starts coming home and they're passing each other at one point, and it was emotional. It was emotional. What's more emotional is when you're in the owner's area and you've got Chris Waller 10 metres to the right looking at you like, what are you doing over there with Gay? And Gay's like, you're not going over there with Chris. And it's like you're in this awkward zone of 2 different trainers with the 2 horses in the race, and you just don't know where to stand. It's really awkward.
Good problem to have, though, right?
Great problem to have. You get over it if you win. You just quickly join into that crowd. You just ditch the other one real quick.
Well, look, as an owner, everyone has their right to do it how they please. I reckon. At the end of the day, if you own the pony, you can do whatever you like.
If you're putting in the money into the industry, absolutely. Who cares if there's a couple of minutes of confusion,
And look, it is one of those things. Like, to be honest, I think every trainer, it's sort of like our industry in recruitment. We'd love every client to be exclusive with us, but the reality is, for different reasons, they will use different agencies, and sometimes different stables just get the stock that you're after, and so naturally you do form a close relationship though. Like the thing with these names, Chris Waller and Gay Waterhouse and Kieran Ma, like they're very accessible people when you're when you're spending money and buying into their stables. So you do form really good relationships with them and the administration and the bloodstock and everyone in the team. And it's you can see why the industry is essentially just a big family. Like there's competitive juices between all the trainers, but at the same time, they can't not respect each other as well.
It's so unique, in that regard, horse racing. Like obviously you look at a lot of the big clubs in different sports across the world, and if you've got big owners, I'm thinking about, NBA sides where they've got massive multi-billionaire owners, and they obviously have interactions with the coaches and so on and so forth. But there's there's no other industry where you can be the trainer and literally have thousands of different people who are paying you to look after horses that they might own. You know, like you could have someone owning like a 5% share in a horse and that's it. Or then you could have someone like yourself who's got maybe 10 to 20 horses with the one stable. Like,
they're dealing with all extremes, and then you've got the syndicators and you've got all these micro slot holders. So Gold Trip's a good example. Like there's hundreds of owners of Gold Trip. And I remember at Melbourne Cup last year, where again Mel was in the race and didn't win it, but I was standing next to all the Gold Trip owners, and they were about to start hugging me and carrying on and yahooing like, "Oh my God, we won the Melbourne Cup!" And I was like, "No, we fucking didn't." There was just hundreds. I was like getting swamped. It's a funny game for that. Like, and the passion of people, like, which I love. Like, you could have 0.5% in a horse, or you could have 100%, and you still feel like it's your child racing that weekend. Like you're just so invested into it. So, and at the top level, like obviously social media and general media, mainstream media, like there's so much content getting out there now, good and bad, and you can't ignore it. Like I'm someone who I consume it all, especially coming into the Cup. Like, I love it. It's a passion industry. Like
everyone's got an opinion.
And it's crazy. Like, there's been some other syndicators that have come into the market in the last couple of years. Like, I think of My Racehorse, and they take that micro ownership to another level where it's a fixed cost. Someone popped into our DMs and saying that Just Fine, the Metropolitan winner, because was with King Charles, and then he sold it to Australia. That they actually gave that ownership of that micro share as a birthday present to one of their friends. So it's like it's a fantastic little thing that they're doing. But like the big owners like yourself and Aussie Kerr and the rest of those people are the ones that really do fuel the industry. So
no, look, there's a lot of science, there's a lot of data. It's not just hit and get lucky style industry. Like some people it is, but that's like winning lotto. Like there's formulas to, from my learnings of, the colts versus, like whether you're buying yearlings or whether you're buying proven horses, and we'll talk a bit about that. The boys or the girls, like, just portfolio wise, stayers versus sprinters, like really just working out, like, do you put all in one camp? That's, so Chris Waller, obviously, significant investment into New South Wales racing. Kieran Maher, significant into Victorian, other trainers up here in Queensland. So, one thing is you don't want to have your whole portfolio in the same race as everyone, all fighting to get into the same race, because you're just fraught with danger and disappointment. So, making sure you've got a spread in that portfolio of horses is really important. Yeah,
and that's probably a nice segue into that sort of strategy piece. So, I know you've owned horses for a long time, but never really sort of dived in deep and thought, no, I'm going to really get into this until, a few years ago. So how did that process sort of work out? When did you make the decision? And once you made the decision, how did you go about being like, okay, this is what I'm going to do and this is how I'm going to start out?
Yeah. So for me, like, as you get older and less capable in your own sporting abilities, that was kind of the moment where
I was about 16.
I was like, oh man, I'm getting so unfit and slow. But yes, like I'm such a competitive person naturally. So I was like, all right, well, what do I love? Like, what am I passionate about? What would get the adrenaline flowing? And for me, it was racing, and greyhounds were out. So it was thoroughbred. So then I just applied my sort of recruitment mindset, right? So, all right, like if I'm going to work out, where do I invest? So for me, it was about, all right, I need the best trainer, the best facilities, buying the best blood stock. So I already had this sort of screening process in my mind of selection. And ultimately, initially, I went through a few, and basically I got down to the Waller camp. And Charlie and Chris and the rest of the team were just incredibly impressive in terms of their formula for racing at Tier 1 racing. And I always said to them, like, I want to be, like, how you start is how you finish. So the first horse has to be something special. And the first horse was the Group 1 winning Sydney Cup Selino.
That's pretty good.
So it's a pretty good hook. And I guess, like, I've honestly, the last 3 or 4 years is like a master's in racing. Like, you could, as an owner, you get you analyse races, I think, and Chris would agree with this and has said it, the owner looks at the race in much more depth and detail than what the trainer will. The trainer obviously does their job incredibly well, but the owner looks through a slightly different lens and can spot some things that sometimes the trainer's not necessarily looking for. We're probably also a little bit more hopeful at times. Sometimes trainers can go, no, this thing's rubbish, like just move it on. So it's a good balance between the two. But it was about, and then my learning is, all right, so there's certain stock, once you really start to get in the detail of knowing what works, other camps lob up with stock that you go, well, that's actually a fantastic opportunity. And at first I felt like I was cheating on my wife and, that sort of feeling between the camps. But I think everyone understands, like, the tier one owners, it's very uncommon for them not to have multiple stables that they're dealing with.
Yeah, well, you look at Aussie Kier.
Yeah.
He's a great example. Obviously, Noel Greenhole as well, who I know you sort of had a lot to do with in the last couple of years. And it's just like, I sort of look at it almost like having shares in the stock market. Like, you want to spread your risk, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's how Chris explained it right at the start. His advice to me was don't go 100% in any horse unless you want to buy a whole portfolio of 100%. Like, exactly like a share portfolio, spread it out. Again, get the balance between the yearlings or the tried horses or, the boys or the girls, the sprinters, get your formula right and know what you want to race for. And for me, like, one of the main things was, like, what is your purpose of racing?
Yeah.
Are you trying to make money? Like, is this your income in life, or is it actually you're doing this for the adrenaline, the rush, the enjoyment, the being in an industry, the social aspect? And for me, it's like I've always said with racing, if I broke even, won many Group 1s, and just had an incredible journey in the industry, I'd 100% take that every day of the week. Like, that would be the dream.
Yeah.
And it's an industry where your investment goes up and down. Like, it's a portfolio, so some yearlings you buy are on paper absolute screamers, and then honestly, like, couldn't win a benchmark 54 in the back end of Goondiwindi, and they cost 600k. But then you can get something that's just electric and just straight away turns it on, and like Zougotcha is a great example. Like, as a mare now, she hasn't had her best year, but she by value of winning 3 or 4 Group 2s and a Group 1, if she was in foal to I'm Invincible, she's probably a $4.5 million mare. And she was a 500k purchase. So she can cover a lot of the portfolio. You win certain Group 1 races and it pays a significant chunk of some of the others. So, but you might not actually, the funds of Zougotcha could be 4 years down the track.
Yeah.
So you're funding this buy-in investment. You obviously pay for everything up front. And then you're sort of slowly chipping away at it through prize money. You still got to pay your training fees. I'm very detailed in my analytics of the finances. And then one day you just get these lump sums for when you sell the valuable horses.
So on that then, you've obviously been in the game now for a lot more closely for a few years. So from what you've sort of seen so far and from your experiences, are you sort of leaning in one direction or the other? Is it I like buying the fillies, or I'd love to own a colt who goes to standard stud, stayers, sprinters? Is there any particular preference as it stands?
My recipe learning is girls are better than boys in terms of residual value. So
Yep.
I think I've probably had. It depends on my wife. She probably, if she listens to this podcast, she might not like this. I reckon I've had, let's say 15 to 20 colts. Say if it's 15, probably 13 have been chopped. So the probability of a boy
So low.
saying intact is like, it's just, as an entire, it's really low. Mind you, Snowman this weekend. Keep watching on him. He's still ready to roll as a colt. The girls, obviously, just the residual value. So in terms of portfolio, I'd actually say now we're probably 80% filly and mare, 20% colt or gelding. So all the stayers are pretty much gelded. There's no breeding market in Australia for a stayer, so there's no point. Like, we've just bought into one out of Qatar Racing, so Aussie Kia and ourselves, and St George, the Mighty Dragons.
Go the Dragons.
So St George, he'll be out in the autumn, and again, like, we just gelded him straight away. Like, there was no point. So he'll be a better horse for it, better racehorse for it.
Is that something that you think the breeding industry as a whole needs to address? Like, kind of that we are so quick to dismiss those staying entires that we should actually be investing in them a bit more. So, you know, the domestic market here for stayers can actually be bolstered a bit.
Yeah, I think we just have such a hard climate for the stayers. So, like, obviously in Europe, softer tracks, obviously longer, straighter, just less turning, which for the horse, again, can obviously put pressure on joints. But our tracks are so firm and the weather's so hot for so much of the year. Like, as you know, like, there's just a lot of injuries with stayers. Like, pretty much every stayer I've got at some point, I don't want to jinx anything right now, has had some sort of injury. And so I don't... It's why the Melbourne Cup and Caulfield Cup and this end of the spring season is so heavily dominated by the Europeans, because they come in, like, if they clear quarantine well and sort of don't drop too much weight, they go really... West Wind Blows, great example. They go really, really well. But yeah, I don't think Australia will ever be big, like, on the staying scene. If you look at Selino, there's 2 to 3 races a year where he'll actually feature. He can't do anything under 3,200. He's terrible to watch. It's painful.
But tell you what, he's got a big engine.
He's got a very big engine. As soon as he's out to 3,200, he's on. He'll be in any field. And but under it, it's like, it's frustrating. Like, not frustrating. It's just hard watching.
Yeah.
But my other view is a lot of these European horses, and take Huyamal as an example, they come out now, and because we train over here essentially to sprint, these stayers are now they're losing endurance. So you look at the Caulfield Cup on the weekend, Huyamal couldn't stay 2,400. Like, he was a rating 118 over 2,400 back in Europe. So so he was a dominant distance horse. And now he's just been, I guess, trained and coached into the mile to 2,000, mile and a quarter. And he's actually being very competitive in that space. So it's just the training methodology over here and tracks, and like, it's just, I don't think it'll ever be big in Australia. I think the climate just won't allow for it. So I think, you know, for me, like, would I prefer the stayers versus the sprinters? There's so much competition in the sprinting market. Like, there's just obviously thousands and thousands. I actually think the yearling sales have got to slow down. I think there's too many.
So many.
Oh, there's thousands.
You're telling me how many lots there were at Magic Millions?
13 or 1,400.
And then Inglis a few months later?
500-600. You've got the Inglis Digital now just constantly rolling around. Like, there's the European yearling sales. Like, there's the Caracas sales. Like, there's so many sales going on. And that's just up here, right? Like, there's still yearling sales, like, for Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, WA, like, they're rolling all over the country. Tassie, like, there would probably be, I would guesstimate, anywhere between sort of, I reckon 4,000 to 7,000 yearlings a year sold to get into the racing scene. So you go, your probability's pretty cactus. Like, it's not good when you look at those odds. So if you don't have a formula, like, you're literally just guessing. Yeah.
And look, buying a yearling or buying into a yearling is the ultimate gamble in the racing game then.
Yeah,
like
100%.
Particularly buying a colt.
Yeah. It is like we've watched some of the biggest owners in the country spend crazy amounts of money on the hope that it goes on and wins a Group 1. And look, they work to a model where maybe 1 in 20, 30, 40 will. But they'll spend millions of dollars per horse. And honestly, they'll be gelded and be on the Inglis Digital for a $1.5 million horse. Is nothing to see it sell for 30, 40K.
Well, what's that horse, Zarastro, who's been doing some work up here in Queensland, who he was I think he was a $2 million purchase by one of the big players.
It's the abstract at the moment.
Yeah, he's $3 million.
chucking the blinkers on. They're trying.
Trying absolutely everything.
Yeah, I'm pretty vocal on him. He just doesn't have it. Sorry, Waller Camp, if you're listening, but he'll come out and win this weekend. Look, and it is hard because you spend that much, you want to give it a fair crack, right? Like, there's nothing worse being the owner than seeing a big investment just get wasted. So, I totally get that. But if it's taking the slot off other horses that actually are competitive, then that can be frustrating.
So do you think then the industry almost needs to move forward with these battle-hardened end tyres? I think of in recent years a Fierce Impact, that miler who wins 2 or 3 Group 1s and he gets retired at 7. Mm-hmm. Is that kind of where you think the industry will head to kind of mitigate the amount of sires or new season sires that are going into the breeding market as well?
It's hard. There's so much money in the so money rules the world of racing, right? It's just this vicious cycle of the gambling money comes in that funds the prize money of racing, the amount of purchasing going on, the publicity of racing now. You go to the Magic Millions and these price tags are just insane.
And it's one after the other. Oh, constant 400 grand, 600 grand.
And these numbers are just dropping you're right, 600k, next lot 450k, next lot 1.1 million, the next lot. It's just madness. You sit there as just a general human going, where is all this money coming from? And it's usually you long. I'm glad they finally got a win over mine. While there's that much money coming in, to be honest, they're not going to break the formula. They're just going to keep going. And even post-COVID, this world of trying to calm down inflation and everything, you've only got to look at some of the sales going on at Europe at the moment. It's Australian trainers buying $1 million plus horses again, and just the money is insane. But prize money's with it. So, you can win the Hill Stake Group 2, which arguably is I would say the most overpaid Group 2 race in Australia, and you pick up 1.2 million for first.
Yeah.
It's mad. It's bigger than most of the Group 1s. So it's a lot of money. Funds a lot more.
So on that then, prize money is insane at the moment. Obviously, New South Wales, everyone knows how insane it is down there. Had the Everest recently. The Golden Eagle's a $10 million race. There's all these pop-up races worth $1-2 million, blah, blah, blah. As an owner who, is going to have horses consistently at hope in those sort of races from, autumn through to spring, so on and so forth, what's your philosophy when it comes to a mare, for example, winning a black type race with prestige that looks great on the CV versus, a race that might be a pop-up race, but it's worth $2 million, whereas this black type one's worth $500,000. What's your philosophy on that?
It's sort of like a superannuation plan. So do you take the money now or do you hold for the residual value? I'd take the black type in a mare and know that when it goes to sale, and you'll still hopefully have 2, 3, 4 years of that mare racing, that horse. Look, the one-off win, you want it. There's different, so Gay will go for the 2 years. She'll really try and win. Her belief is, let's get a return. Let's hit it as soon as we can. Chris will take a little bit more time. He's starting to get a bit stronger in the 2-year-old season, but he'll sort of hold and probably focus more on 3-year-old up from a developmental perspective of the horse. Look, for me, Zooey's the perfect angel because, she wins Group 1s and Group 2s very early in her career, and banks both money and residual value. Black type's where you want to be with the mares. You want to have black type because no matter what, if you needed to exit or if you wanted to exit the horse, you're going to get a good return.
Yeah.
Imperatriz is the perfect example at the moment. She goes close in that this year's Everest, but she's probably going to win her second Group 1 this week.
Yeah, if she runs in the Everest, you'd imagine she'd go very close to winning absolutely. It, and then this prep, but instead they've foregone that. But I think that's a direct reflection of the owners, right? Tiaco they don't need the money, absolutely. So that philosophy, is probably reflective of what's your, like you said when we first started chatting, what's your overall strategy or philosophy while you're in the game, and whilst money is obviously awesome, you'd be happy to walk away breaking even, and it's more about 100%. The journey.
I just love it. like living and learning in the industry now is just amazing. There's so many honestly beautiful people who work in the industry. You know, you see these animal activists carrying on about the treatment of horses and the welfare of the horses, and like part of the prize money goes to the Animal Welfare League. But also, like if people could actually see, and I'm talking tier 1 trainers and yards and handling, like I can't speak for Outback, any of that sort of stuff. But the amount of love and passion for the animal is like immense. It warms your heart. Like you go in there and you just see how beautifully treated these animals are. It's unbelievable. And I just think, you know, for me, I would be very happy one day in my rocking chair looking back, hopefully with a Melbourne Cup in the corner of the room.
Eating dinner off your Cox plate.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Oh, just like, for me, it was about like, I don't want to get old one day and then just not have lived experiences. And I'm in a very fortunate position, thankful through business. And I go, you know what, like, I just want to look back and be proud of the fact that, you know, whether it was in recruitment or it was in racing or anything else we do with family or whatever it is, you know, you gave life a go and you just got really stuck in. And that's sort of the feeling I've got with racing. Like, you get frustrated as buggery when things don't go right, which is often like you, like the gambling motto, you lose a lot more than you win.
What?
But you know what? You only need to win a couple of big ones to really catch up real quick to your losses. Bet you they don't say that on the ad. So yeah, no, I love it.
Yeah.
We'll just ask you a couple more questions, but one that I wanted to kind of go back to, say, those Magic Millions or those, you know, when you're purchasing those yearlings. Have you ever seen one where you're like, I have to buy into this one?
I've seen ones where I absolutely don't want to buy into it, and trainers are like, trust me, and then I'm like, how much? 1.6 million. And I'm like,
That's a lot of trust.
that thing looks more like a pony than a horse.
I think I was with you one day when you saw one.
Oh, so you can. There's some where you really. I've got one at the moment that actually from the Inglis a year or two ago called Amaro. That like beautiful Zoo Star filly. And again, just one of those ones that I was like, oh, like that's just a magical horse. Yeah, look, there's definitely ones, but to be honest, they all look the same at that age, pretty much. Like my eye isn't trained well enough to be able to separate the difference on some of these.
Because there's a lot of people out there, owners, punters alike, who are like, oh yeah, that one looks phenomenal. Yeah, look at his hindquarter. It's just like, shut up.
No. It's like looking at little kids saying, yeah, have a look at that athletic one. Sounds a bit wrong.
That sounds a little bit wrong.
Sounds very wrong. I tell you what was interesting though. I went out to Gay and Adrian's stable and to see Huyamel maybe a month or two ago. And Gay being Gay, like Gay is amazing in terms of hospitality, and like she's just one of those rare gems in life and just one of the most beautiful people to know. And so we're walking through all the stables and she's pulling out all the different alligator blood, having a good look at him. He's a giant. Hawaii 5-0 was there.
Yeah, he's big.
And so we were just looking, like, and I said to Gay, like, I want you to talk me through what you're looking at, like in these horses. Like when you look at this, like where is your eye going, and like what are you actually properly assessing to see if this thing's ready to roll? And it was just phenomenal, to be honest. It was that uni degree moment where you're just sitting there going, wow, like this is pretty cool, right? Like you're sitting here with one of the world's best trainers, and just she's so precise with everything that she was pinpointing. And yeah, like those moments are the ones that actually help you educate to when you look at a horse and sort of see certain things and go, oh, okay, well, I can see what that's got versus this. And but sometimes it's like, you know, when you go into JB Hi-Fi and you want to buy a TV and there's like 20 TVs on the wall and they're all like, they all look quite good. And you're going, oh, but that one's just a tiny bit better pixelated than that one. You get it home, you don't know the difference between any of them.
No.
So the yearlings are kind of a bit like the JB Hi-Fi wall in my mind. And that's where I just pay for the trainers to go, all right, we truly know what we're doing.
Yeah.
But to be honest, they like, I'll sound disrespectful to bloodstock managers here. Like they'll look at the breeding, like they'll get the vet reports, they look at the anatomy of the horse. Like there's a formula to it as well. And truthfully, for my experience, for every one that makes it to Saturday grade, there's 9 that don't.
Yeah.
So they can have the most precise eye in the world, but their stats are actually pretty rubbish too when you think about it.
Yeah. Well, how often do you hear about stories of horses that have a weird gait, or they didn't look great as a yearling, but then go on to become? I wish I win.
Yeah.
She had a bent leg. Like.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
who you Mel?
Yeah.
Like,
Who you Mel? Yeah.
On the weekend, like probably a little unknown fact, but the day before we thought we were scratched. So we all about the gait motion and just. And as Gay said, it was born that way and it'll die that way. So if you scratch him from this, you're going to scratch him forever in Melbourne. So fortunately, passed clear, fit to run. And but yeah, there was a real moment a day or so before, and I was like, oh, it's heartbreaking when that happens, right?
Yeah.
And like I was saying, for the owners of, well, look at Without a Fight now, they would be absolutely livid if the winner gets scratched. But I guess you won't know it. But yeah, there's nothing worse than that phone call from a trainer. Like Sheraz last year, a week and a half out from the Cup, was ready to roll, and it was a wet track, which is perfect for Sheraz. And you get the call that he's injured, and it's just heartbreaking. I remember when Selino, again, he was up for a massive year last year, and he tore a tendon, but he was going to go Sydney Cup. He was going to go to Royal Ascot for the Gold Cup, and then he was back for the Melbourne Cup. So it was going to be this beautiful journey this year, and just everything's written off, and he's in the paddock. Well, he came back and won the Brisbane Cup. Very prestigious.
Nash Rawiller, thank you very much.
Thank you, yeah, good old Nash. So no, it's fun, but look, I reckon there's my learning now in terms of, all right, if you want to make money in this game as an owner, it depends on how much investment you want to put in, but yearlings are a dangerous way to play the game because they are a lottery. Zougotcha, beautiful luck. I'll say luck, because quite frankly, we've got other yearlings that are better breeding than Zooey, and they've done absolutely nothing. And $500,000 horses reselling for 20, 30K. But then you watch those 20 to 30K purchases on the English Digital, and they go on and win 2 out of the next 3 starts in the country, and they make 30 to 40K already. So the next the English Digital, if you don't want to spend big bucks in racing, English Digital is a great place to go.
Yeah, 100%.
Is that what you'd recommend for like first time owners?
Yeah, like if you just want to, if it's about like being in something with your mates, and you don't want to go too deep in the cash pools. Now keep in mind, and every trainer will tell you this, it costs the same to train a slow horse as what it does a fast one. So the gap between the training fees of a regional trainer versus a Chris Waller or a Gay Waterhouse, they're not, like, they're different, but they're not stupendously different.
Significant, no.
Yeah.
Do, yeah.
So it's the trail. It's the, like, so the initial purchase is like obviously the big bite at the start, but then you do have this recurring cost base going through. So you want your horse racing. And then when they get injured, like you got medical bills and veterinary bills and the paddock and so it's not a cheap sport. But for me, like most things with me in life, like if I'm going to do it, I'm just going to go hard. So I wanted to win Group 1. That was like, I knew from day one sitting there with Chris and Gay and all of them, I don't want to be at the arse end of this industry. Like I want to be at the pointy end. And that's bloody hard. Like,
yeah.
Remember when Selino won the Sydney Cup, Chris just looked at me and said, well, you're screwed. It shouldn't be this easy. And I was like, oh, whatever, this is easy. Sure enough, it's not. So, yeah.
What a lesson to learn.
Oh,
So what's next for Sneesby Racing? Like, what's anything that the portfolio is looking at next, or?
Yeah, so on the track, we're sort of finishing out spring. So Melbourne Cup being the grand final, I guess, in my mind of, like, for me, the Melbourne Cup is just a race. It's the trophy that I have to have. It's not the richest race anymore. It's probably still got the most prestige, I think, in the country. But if I'm on that rocking chair without winning the Melbourne Cup, I'll probably still be going with stayers. I'll still be reading the guide and
like Jerry Harvey and John Singleton at the track.
It's
80 or whatever.
I just really, like, for me, that's like the ultimate in racing is the 2 miler. Like, I reckon it's such a pure test of racing and endurance, and And to be honest, to a degree, there's still a lot of luck, but it takes a little bit of the sprinting luck out of it. The barrier draw can become a little bit less meaningful, missing a kick, missing the jump. Like you can just settle into a rhythm a bit better versus, some of these, like the Everest, for example, obviously a very rich race, but gee, you still need a lot of luck. You need things to go your way. 100%. You need the right opening at the right time. It's currently European buying season for the in-training horses. So literally this week, Tattersalls is on. And the Aussie trainers are very prevalent over there at the moment. So no doubt there'll be some good stock. Mr. Waterville was bought out of that sale last year. So he's racing in the Geelong Cup tomorrow, everyone. So $17 or $18 shot. So wouldn't go too hard either. But, like yearlings take a year or two to get up to speed and actually get on track, and you pay all those fees the whole way. Stayers, even though they get on track a lot quicker, or the European horses, I should say, they're not all stayers, it takes them a full year. Like as we're seeing with Counter, this is his first real prep. He's still trying to mature and work it all out. He'll be better in his next prep, but hopefully he gets up this Saturday, I think. I think he's back.
He's officially back.
And he could be good in that, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. So no pressure. But yeah, no, for me, I will always have a percentage of stayers. Like I just love that end of racing. I think it's just the pinnacle of racing. But probably 3/4, sort of anywhere 12 to 1600, and then sort of a quarter, we'll say the sort of mile and a half over.
Yeah.
At the time of recording, we're 2 weeks out from the Melbourne Cup.
Bank it.
Confidence level?
High. Despite the jump and the drift in people's confidence on the barrier work. Change of jockey. No disrespect to Craig Williams, but he's a master of the art in terms of one of the best humans in the industry that you could ever wish for. But we've got the opportunity to go for someone now, Joe Moreira, who's just best all time, and probably the best in the gates. Was actually one of the main motivators. So he in racing industry is just famous for actually working horses in the gates, which clearly for Soulcombe is a really important factor. Soulcombe's got the engine. You need luck in a cup. Well weighted, done the miles. He's good to go. Like the camp confidence is high, but it was high going into the Caulfield Cup. So you still need things to go your way. Like when there's 24 horses on a track, you just need things not to get in your way, and you need no jockey error. You just, you want the right track conditions. But I feel very confident he's going to be fighting out the finish. He'll be there. He won't be in that second half of that field. He will be in the front half powering home. So... yeah,
it's a long Flemington straight, plenty of time to wind up.
Plenty of time. I just hope he's off the rail. His last couple of runs, he's been on the rail, and you kind of get stuck when you're out back on the rail. So I'd love him to be slotted in, even if he's 16th to 20th, slotted in and plenty of cover and just waiting for his moment. Do the Selino or the Sydney Cup, just slowly progress through the 3200. And look, he's got the engine. We know that. He's got the weights. There's a lot of ticks.
And what about Snowman? So you're a progressive 3-year-old as well. So is he heading towards a Victoria Derby?
Hopefully. We'll see how he draws this weekend. So he's down in Moonee Valley, all going to plan. So that's, 2,050 odd. In the futures, I think he's second favourite for that at the moment. So I'd love him to... So he needs to draw a barrier there, or he'll probably go to Randwick over the mile. But... If he was to go to Moonee Valley and get up and win it, then I reckon we'd keep pushing him forward, and it's just a test on these horses. You just don't know if they're going to stay the distance, and it's what makes that race probably a little bit more of a lottery than others. Like there's not a hard, fast evidence line that they're going to see out the distance. So, but there's also opportunity in that. I'm excited for him. Sneesby Racing colours. Joe Moreira, first win in the colours on Snowman. And now he's just going to ride Soulcombe. It's an omen.
Easy as. One final question. So we talked about the big guns in the Sneesby Racing stable, particularly Counter, obviously, is the biggest gun in the stable. Is there anything, you mentioned Amaro, is there anything else that hasn't raced yet that there's some positivity coming out of the camps, one of the trainers?
Yeah, there's a lot of good, I'll say, young horses coming through. Until you get them into race conditions, like it's hard to know because they can train. There's some horses that train beautifully, but then get to the trials or get to the track, and whether it be immaturity or just experience, they just take time. I mean, I'm really interested in a couple. There's one called Just Glamorous, which is a Justified Global Glamour mare. Just unfortunate. Only ever had 2 race starts off the top of my head. Absolute purest of bloodlines. Like I used to always say, it's Tiger Woods breeding with Serena Williams. If those two had a baby, that'd be Just Glamorous. I'm really excited to see her go in the autumn. So she unfortunately had a bit of a hamstring issue for the spring. She was training the house down. She was ready to roll, and just a slight tear. So it's nothing serious, but obviously that's just time. She's now back in stable with the Waterhouse camp. And I actually think she'll be something to watch next year. Like she's special. She's big. She's strong. Just hasn't got off to an easy, clean start in her career. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of them. Like still with the stayers though, like St. George coming out.
Yep.
Big grey, my first ever grey. He's actually almost white.
He's
I
love
just
that.
A beautiful horse. With the Kieran Marr camp, again, I reckon he's going to be a star. Might need the first prep, but by spring next year, he could be a cup contender. He would have gone into the cup this year if we got him here on time and conditions were right. And Mr. Waterville, no one really knows Mr. Waterville, but he's a weapon of a horse. Like you'd only have to look up some of his race replays to see what he can do. So now I genuinely feel blessed because there'd be 10 or so horses that are all Group 1 level.
Doing these ones.
Yeah. And then there's still I don't know if I should give the real number of the horses I've got.
You don't have to share it. Look, I think people can gather that it's a few.
There's still I think about 20 that have never raced. So there's a whole stable sitting there ready to roll. And I know some boys in the office would be upset if I didn't say I own a Celtic. There's another one that actually Big Churchill colt. He's almost ready to go.
I own a Celtic.
We'll see the Sneesby Racing Silks, so they're the ones that counter Sheraz, Snowman wear, so we'll see plenty more of them.
Yeah, and they stand out now. We've changed the colour a little bit. After the almighty Winner Manly Seagulls, the red, white and green. So that's the nature of the colours. But boys, I'm just pumped. Like to be honest, it's an emotional roller coaster being an owner. But to have horses in these races is a blessing. You're obviously disappointed when you know you got a live shot and it doesn't end up winning. There's no hiding the fact that there's massive disappointment, but just the excitement in the weeks of the build-up, and
it's the fun part, really.
It's so much good banter in our office. Everyone loves it.
Yep.
It's damn exciting.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Craig. We appreciate your time. Sneesby Racing. Big couple of weeks coming up. Best of luck, hey?
Straight to Vegas after the cup. It's on. Put it on, people.